Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to Matador, the unexpected violent tornado in Texas. So, tornadoes, they're just, like, they must happen relatively often in America, because I've never heard of this one, and I've been watching and reacting to tornado videos for quite a while now. And was this an EF3, EF4, EF5? You know, the damage caused must be in the millions, assuming that, like, because these tornadoes, the way they rip roofs apart, sometimes entire buildings and houses, it's just like you've got to hope that the person whose house that was had some kind of specialist tornado insurance.
June 21st, 2023. James LeDoux and his son Dylan are chasing a storm in rural Texas when it begins to produce a tornado. Closing in on the town of Matador, the two men watch as the monstrous tornado emerges from the rain and pulls right behind them. Little did they know, they were filming an unseasonably strong and deadly vortex. It's a week prior, and residents of Matador, Texas are doing the usual rural Texan activities, tending to livestock, harvesting crops for the summer, and doing pretty much anything to beat the heat. A couple hundred miles away in Oklahoma, the National Weather Service is doing their typical duties as well, monitoring weather models for ingredients that would create severe weather, and they've been pretty busy as multiple rounds of storms in the past weeks have affected the United States, dropping incessant tornadoes, hail, and wind. They identify that another strong storm system is preparing to impact the United States. Because of this, they highlight a risk area accordingly. The thing is, Matador, Texas is right here, away from any predicted storms. As the day draws closer.
So there was no reason for alarm, or no reason to kind of pre-warn Matador that a tornado was on its way.
The National Weather Service hones in on the forecast, placing a 2% risk near the border of Colorado and Wyoming, almost 600 miles away from Matador. No one in or around the town is expecting any significant weather, much less a tornado. It's peak afternoon in Texas, and the sun is pushing a staggering 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Ooh,
unbeknownst to locals, the sunny skies were actually a menacing sign. You see, as the sun heats up the air, the atmosphere builds up instability, or the potential energy for strong storms. Near Matador, the instability is reaching absurd amounts. For reference, the typical level of instability needed for storms is around 1,000 joules per kilogram, and by the afternoon, North Texas was pushing almost 6,000 joules per kilogram.
Wow.
This potential energy made the region a ticking time bomb, but a bomb is useless without a fuse, and that's what weather forecasters were banking on. I mean, there weren't even any storms around. And that's exactly when the first storm formed. Bits of rain begin to bubble up near Pampa, Texas, growing rapidly. More storms begin to pop up and immediately show signs of rotation.
Because don't tornadoes require like humidity and moisture in the air, I think?
And radar, almost as if some unseen force is powering them. They begin merging together into one much larger storm and are moving to the south, an unusual direction for thunderstorm motion. The storms continue to try and rotate, getting closer and closer with each frame, until suddenly a new storm bursts over Turkey, Texas, and in just a few seconds becomes the fastest rotating of the bunch. Without any warning, a funnel cloud descends from the sky. It's hardly visible before rain and fog obscures it from view, but the tornado is absolutely strengthening. Storm chaser Russ Contreras approaches from the south, and with little time to spare, begins filming the tornado. The tornado is actually visible here, and way larger than previously thought. Cranking the video's contrast, we can observe that it has transitioned into a strong wedge tornado buried in the rain. Its movement is slow, at less than 20 miles per hour. It's very slowly ripping any trees or grass that would get in its way. Luckily though, it's essentially dancing in an open field, away from anybody or anything. As if the visibility of the tornado wasn't bad enough, it begins to absorb more rain and become even hazier, making it completely invisible to anyone on the ground. At the same time, the track deviates slightly to the east. This is an indication that the tornado is occluding. A tornado occlusion is essentially when the storm decides to form a new area of rotation, and the old area, including the tornado, detaches from the main portion of the storm, ultimately dying. While this should be good news for the town of Matador, this occlusion is behaving in an incredibly dangerous way. The giant wedge tornado is now seen to be shrinking in width, but the energy is not dwindling. Just like an ice skater pulling their limbs closer inwards to spin faster, the shrinking has an added effect of making the tornado spin faster.
Great analogy. Okay, so the tornado is actually getting more powerful, more intense.
Meteorologist Braden Barton and his friend are situated to the east of town, where the tornado can be seen entering the town from the south.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
Big tornado.
There it is.
Oh my god. Yeah, I can see it definitely on my phone.
Big tornado.
Oh my god.
Big tornado.
That is a big tornado.
That's it right there.
The radar. Wait, it turned.
No, it's heading straight for the town. That's it right in front of us.
Was that lightning as well?
Suddenly, the ground beneath the tornado begins to be stripped away. As the tornado becomes stronger and stronger, it's able to gouge the ground, even scouring the top layer of soil, something only seen in some of the strongest possible tornadoes. Something is very different from what we saw just a few moments ago. The storm is also moving dangerously close to Matador and continues to shrink. In fact, the difference in winds is so extreme, a home just over 200 yards away is unscathed. Sadly, this would not be the case for other homes in the direct path, such as the Marshall family home, which was about to take a direct hit. The devastation to the property starts with the tree line to the north. Large oak trees and low-lying shrubbery are beyond shredded. Rather, they're violently mangled and torn out of the ground. Some are fully stripped of their bark. Next is the barn on the property, which is practically disintegrated, and a small stone outhouse is sheared to the ground. That's right, a pure stone structure is sheared away by just the winds.
I never used to think tornadoes could do that. I used to think, it was only wooden houses that were able to be torn apart by tornadoes. But yeah, I was proven wrong when a brick house literally got disintegrated. It was just, to think wind can do that is just wild.
Sadly, the only thing left to hit is the home itself. As the Marshalls hide in the basement, the entire home is shredded above them. Cars are lifted into the air like toys, and they disappear into the funnel. In some miracle, they all survive, most likely due to being underground, but pretty much none of their property is as lucky. In fact, not even trees remain, as they are stripped out of their root systems and tossed off the property like it's nothing. If this couldn't get any wilder, portions of the concrete foundation and sidewalk are cracked and shifted. Basically, all that remains of the Marshalls' entire livelihood is the basement they hid in. The tornado is continuing towards Matador and still shredding the top layer of grass and soil. One of the Marshalls' cars is thrown to the ground here, with the tornado heaving it over 200 yards from its original location. Scientist and National Weather Service employee James Ledoux and his son Dylan are chasing the storm and begin to drive south, noticing the funnel is almost entirely wrapped in rain. As they situate themselves in the center of town, the rain slightly clears out. The twister is now dangerously close to the town, and it is only now that it is brushing the north edge and destroying homes that the local tornado sirens sound. From James's account, this only gave around 4 minutes of lead time to the approaching threat, which may have had implications to people affected later on.
This sound is so scary.
Is this going into town? It could be, or just...
A home, not even in the direct wind field, sees the effects of the funnel next. With solely 2 rooms left standing in the entire home, it dodges another home to the right, whose roof is ripped away, with the outhouse on the property sucked into the core of the tornado and shredded to bits. These chunks of the home leave divots in the ground as they are slammed down at violent speeds. The tornado is finished sparing homes now, as the house of Anthony Boyd is next. Anthony rushes down to a storm shelter he had put prior, most likely saving his life, as the tornado rips through his home. Once again, trees on the property are debarked, mangled, and denuded, and hardly anything is spared on the property, including his blue pickup truck, which was completely lofted away. After the tornado passed, Anthony found he was trapped in a storm shelter, but remained hopeful that help would arrive.
Didn't he have his phone on him? Like, because he could have made a call to, you know, the emergency services, friends and family. He must have not had it on him, right? Maybe he was in a rush.
When search and rescue officials came to his property and noticed there was no vehicle to be found, they assumed no one was home at the time. Anthony's friend had to free him, and after looking around, Anthony realized his truck was genuinely nowhere to be found. It wasn't until the next day that Anthony would discover his car half a mile away in an open field. This is what it looked like. In the hundreds of recorded cases of tornado damage, this kind of vehicle mangling is practically unheard of, reserved only for the likes of some of the most violent tornadoes ever recorded. And it gets crazier, as it was discovered the entire engine of the truck was missing. Later, it was found to have been tossed into a nearby lake in the opposite direction. James and Dylan are now driving perpendicular to the vortex, which is beelining directly for them. The tornado barely fits in Dylan's frame.
What's that?
I think my camera sees it.
Wait.
It's right there, Dad. Dad, it's right there.
Yeah,
Go.
I see it.
Holy shit. Go.
As they turn to escape south, their dash cam captures the monster tornado directly behind them.
Wow. Looks very sinister, doesn't it?
I see it. Yep.
It's like it's following them.
The tornado is continuing to the south and now approaching the intersection of Highway 62 and Highway 70, where multiple homes and businesses are set up. The devastation is about to worsen. In the direct path, the home of Matador's mayor, Devana Grundy, sits. The property consists of 6 separate structures, including the main home, pool, and outbuildings for farming. In a split second, every single building would be gone, with hardly any debris left over. 2 homes to the south of Grundy's were reduced to bits as well. Remarkably, others' homes, just 50 yards away, are completely fine, with the worst damage being to shingles on the roofs. The vortex was tightening up to an extremely intense and sharp core.
Gosh, imagine how that would feel. Like your house has been just blown to smithereens, and you look across the street and nothing has happened to their homes. Like it's almost like the tornado wasn't even real. Like, it would be hard not to feel any kind of resentment. But it's not their fault, it's the tornado's fault.
Another home is hit to the south, with nothing left. The slab is basically swept clean. Approaching Highway 62, actual businesses are now in the firing line. A small industrial storage building is shredded away, littering the scene with sheet metal and shrapnel. As the core crosses the highway, chunks of the asphalt are ripped out of the ground, and dirt and debris is embedded into the pavement. Unfortunately, the Matador tornado would claim its first life in this location. 59-year-old Randy Rowland, a semi-truck driver from Oklahoma, was taking cover inside his truck in the parking lot of a gas station right off the highway, when suddenly his truck was violently lofted and slammed back into the ground across the street. The truck was left completely gutted in the process, and Randy was ejected from the vehicle. After attempting to stand up, Randy fell back to the ground, and sadly, he passed away in an ambulance en route to the hospital. Randy was described as a great husband, father, brother, and a great friend to everyone who will forever be missed. Nearby, 2 men, Troy Hernandez and Victor Valenzuela, were stationed in a small work RV as part of a job nearby Matador. With no place to go, the trailer was lifted as well, with the 2 men in it, and slammed into a nearby home. Both men passed away as well. They were described as wonderful individuals to be around and to work with. The home their RV impacted did not survive either, being completely wiped away. A storm shelter on the property likely saved the homeowners' lives. But the worst damage of all on the highway had to be the brand new Dollar General location. Built just a couple months prior, the structure was completely flattened. Portions of the support beams that were anchored and drilled into the concrete slab were bent and yanked out. The strangest part of this location, though, were the rebar reinforced concrete bollards surrounding the building. Somehow, the tornado was able to snap the solid concrete and metal at the base. One can only imagine the winds required for something like that to occur.
If you were standing there, like where these concrete pillars were, you would just be thrown hundreds of yards away. If it can do this to concrete...
The last structure to be impacted along the highway was actually the town's electrical substation, sustaining EF3 damage to the main portion of the station. The scene from above looked like a bomb was dropped on the road, with incredibly prolific damage and death at the location of the highway. Somewhere along the path of damage, multiple vehicles were picked up and mangled beyond recognition. Found in a pond was another truck engine. It belonged to an unrecognizable ball of steel in the pond, which was wrapped around another used-to-be vehicle. Southeast of the pond is the home of Joe and Dale Bumgardner. They are about to sustain another direct impact. Sadly, with nowhere else to go in the time that the sirens went off, they decided to hide in the most interior room of their home, but no structure could protect the two from such a violent tornado, as the entire home is wiped away. Storm chasers Val and Amy Castor quickly flip from chase mode to search and rescue as they stumble upon the mess that used to be the home of the Bumgardners. While they were able to rescue Dale from the rubble, Joe, on the other hand, would not make it. Joe was a member of multiple organizations, taught in the school system for 27 years, and was described as loving, especially to the young people of the area. Her nickname was Nana Joe. She loved her life and the people of Matador. After the home, the tornado began to shrink faster. It impacted the radio tower, sending it crumbling to the ground, as well as completely demolishing one last home before dissipating in an open field. James and Dylan capture the tornado roping out before finally disappearing into nothing once again.
Wow, there's been a lot of devastation here.
Roping out now.
As rescue teams and weather enthusiasts alike began streaming into the area, the sheer strength of the tornado was realized. Large mesquite trees, some of the strongest in the world, were
Look at the side, look at the car. It looks like it's been in a crusher.
debarked, sanded, and mangled like toothpicks. Vehicles were tossed like toys, and homes were completely slapped. But not all was lost. Initially, the tornado had aimed directly for the center of town, where hundreds of homes and businesses stood. Though, even by just sideswiping the area, the death and devastation remained. Surveyors from the National Weather Service and Texas Wind Institute settled on an EF3 rating for the town. This caused a lot of controversy, as some claimed it was a gross underestimate of such a violent tornado.
Yeah,
but
I
more
think it was
importantly
too.
was the issue of the sirens and why they didn't go off until the tornado was well into town. Maybe if the sirens sounded earlier, there would have been more time for the affected to find appropriate shelter, as multiple storm shelters were in Matador. There are also multiple questions to be asked about how the entire risk area was missed. At the very last second, the National Weather Service did upgrade to a small 5% risk around Matador, but that was essentially after the tornado was on the ground. Whatever the case may be, the Matador tornado was a devastating and alluring disaster, and the areas and people affected still struggle to recover to this day.
Wow. It's hard, because I'm sure people want to blame the weather professionals, but at the time, based on their training, it didn't look like the tornado was heading towards Matador. We saw the models that they were looking at, and it didn't look like Matador was at risk. I suppose in hindsight, it's easy to point fingers and say, oh, you should have known better. You should have maybe sounded the warning anyways, just in case. Maybe they should have done that. It's obviously, it's really, really hard, Hindsight is 2020, and these tornadoes, predicting their movement it's not really, sometimes it's not even possible. Like, you can make guesses and things like that, but these tornadoes can shift at any moment. You've just got to think, rest in peace to the people, the fatalities here. Hopefully the town has been able to recover from this. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoy my videos, please help me out by liking and subscribing.